All right, so today our session is supporting ourselves with grace and compassion. And when we were planning our June session, we were actually originally going to talk about COVID. But with all the things in the world going on, we started talking a little bit further, and Tammy Nienaber, who's one of our board members, suggested that Carol has a really great exercise for us to do that will help kind of ease what we're going through. So Carol has a striped shirt on, if you haven't figured that out yet, and there she is. I will get back to her in a minute with an official introduction. And so for July, we are going to have two of our Convergence Summit speakers, Lee Oden and Eric Hansen. They're going to talk about digital opportunities, and they've actually seen things evolve and change since COVID started. So they're going to talk about how to make the most of those potential new opportunities that have been born during the pandemic, and likely will have even evolved by the time we get to July 16th. So this is our summer series. It's free to Convergence Summit attendees. We are recording these so people can view them at a later time. And we do hope you'll join us for the July 16th meeting. In addition, we are still moving forward with Convergence Summit on Thursday, August 13th. It's a full day program. If you've already registered for that, thank you. Most of our speakers are still moving forward with us. So it's going to be the same great lineup of speakers. And also the same great lineup of sponsors. So we've got both sponsors of Convergence Summit and also our annual IABC Minnesota sponsors. Thank you to BrandPoint, PLDG, Bolger, the Employee App, and Celerity. And I know we've got some of our sponsors online with us today. Thank you so much. We covered just two of our sponsors a little bit more in detail at our meeting here today. I'd like to start with Bolger. And I think Mike Worthington is here. Anybody else from your team from Bolger on the line today? So right. Bolger, yep.
No, just myself from Bolger.
Okay, thanks for joining, Mike. Bolger is an expert in print and digital communications. They work alongside their clients' corporate goals to enhance, execute, and streamline marketing and communication strategies. Bolger can help you with traditional print, as well as direct mail, email, and variable data programming. And I've worked with them on our Convergence program and our signage, and they're just super helpful. So I'm so glad that we're partnering with them. And also the Employee App. If this isn't one you know about, it's one you need to get to know about. They are an application created by professionals with decades of communications and HR experience to address the challenges organizations face in communicating with a dispersed and deskless, right? We don't have desks anymore, I guess, through the use of mobile technology. And the Employee App is a holistic internal communication and engagement solution that allows workers to have fast and easy access to the information, documents, and resources they need to succeed in their work. So super excited to learn more about the Employee App along with Convergence, because they will be there, and we'll get to know more about them there too as well. So with that, I would like to introduce Carol. See if we can get to the next slide. So Carol, if you have just joined, Carol, why don't you raise your hand again? Okay, so Carol, Carol's kind of cute. She says she's got a gray streak in her hair.
Was not planned pre-COVID,
yeah.
Post-COVID, I suppose.
post-COVID. So she is looking forward to having her hair done on Saturday. A nice benefit of moving towards the open phase in Minnesota. And Carol is the Chief Self-Esteem Builder at Self Esteem Brands. I wish I could say I had such a unique title. That's just super interesting what Carol does. She's been giving this presentation to employees at Self Esteem Brand globally over the last couple of months. So she's got it pretty well refined. Carol has her doctorate in leadership and organizational change, and she is a professor, associate professor at the University of Minnesota in the health services management and career development area. So Carol, I'm going to let you explain a little bit more about Self Esteem Brands and anything else you want to say about yourself.
Thank you. Hello, IABC. Nice to meet you. So I was the dope that said to my bosses a few years ago, I think my title should be Chief Self-Esteem Officer. But a year into that job, I'm on year 3 of this job, I have changed it to Chief Self-Esteem Builder, because officer, it just seemed like I knew what that meant and I was all confident in that role. Essentially, I lead our HR team and all of our efforts for our employees here at Self Esteem Brands. So SEB, as a shortened term, we own Anytime Fitness worldwide, Waxing the City, Basecamp Fitness, and the Bar Method. So we are a franchise or a franchise system. Anytime Fitness is the largest health and wellness franchise in the world with over 5,000 units. And as it happened with all businesses, when COVID hit, all of our franchisees, our small business owners, were closing all over the world. And so my job in HR, unfortunately, was around seeing which staff we had to say goodbye to because our revenue had dipped so greatly in those first few days. So that was hard. And I'm sure many of you went through that as well, either on the side of the decision or maybe that happened to you, which is hard. And so all of that employee stuff that was happening, I was in my mind as an organizational development person saying, what can we do to help people mentally through this? And so we started to design something called the Pandemic Playlist. And this session that I'm sharing with you was our first session. It's actually a topic I have been teaching for about 20 years, and it is around change and transition. And so my time with you today for the next 45 minutes or so is to offer you a model that you can use for the rest of your life when something happens to you, when a change occurs. We will use COVID as the kind of consistent thing that we've all been through for your learning, but change happens in all different parts. So if you would, Anne, go to the next slide, please. Here's what I know about you. I've heard from Tammy Nienaber and from Anne. You are passionate people. You are resilient. You're in all different types of jobs and communications. That you see obstacles as challenges. I put that you're the best people in the organization because I think Tammy is one of my favorites. When COVID hit, she and I were working side by side on the communications and the messages to our franchisees. So it was a joy to see her in action and the important work that you all do. So next slide, please. So as Anne shared, when we see this symbol, it'll be an opportunity for you to go into a breakout room. This is the way that adults learn, my friends, is for talking through an idea or a concept that I share with you. So that is what will happen. You'll see a thing pop up on your screen if you've not done this yet, and you accept into a meeting. So we hope that you do that. So next slide. This is the way I have designed this learning, and it's the way adults learn. 50% of the gig of you learning something, adult person that is here on this call, is that you have an awareness that you stink at it, that you really, this thing you're not good at. And so a question I ask usually when I'm teaching is, how do you know you stink at something? So I'm going to ask you to put in the chat box, how do you know that you really are terrible at something? And I'll give you one idea. One is someone tells you, it's called feedback or marriage, my friends. your partner, spouse tells you, hey, you messed this up, you're like, I know. So if anyone out there in this world wants to add to our chat box, how do you know that you stink at something? What helps you build awareness around your strengths or development areas? And while you're sharing that, the second part of this model that I love from Dr. Stringer is that you have to have a motivation to change. So we'll be talking during our time together about what is the motivation for you to learn this change and transition model? What happens if you don't? Because we're talking about resiliency and learning to move through something with grace and compassion, as the title offered. I don't see anyone putting in their chat box yet. It does not deter me. I can keep going. The third part of this model is around skill building. I love this. Thank you so much. Kelly said the gut feeling, seeing others do way better. Absolutely. You asking for feedback is a brilliant way. Someone says, I don't like getting feedback. I'd rather have a different gift. Remember that book that came out, Feedback is a Gift? So all of these different ways help you build awareness that you stink at it. Today, I'm just going to help you build awareness around how do you show up when when a change hits you, and how do you go through transition. So thank you for your responses. I love that. When I have zero success at it, what I'm doing, then I'm terrible at it. Absolutely. When I started my consulting business years ago, I thought there'd be no math and no invoices. And so I didn't invoice the clients. And then my team was like, is this a hobby or are we going to get paid? So I had to learn how to do those. That invoicing thing was important. All right. Thank you so much. So let's move to the next slide, Anne. So here's what we're going to learn and talk about first, which is the impact of change. So when a change happens, we are impacted in one of four ways. As I describe these four areas, I'd like you to think about how do you get impacted. The first is when a change happens, it impacts us on a level of our body. Some of us can't eat or eat more, so there's weight loss or gain, headaches or migraines when change happens. Stress, muscle tension. What we learned a lot from our employees, and one that is for me, is insomnia. I would wake up in the middle of the night and think, what is happening to our world, and kind of worry about that. So that is the body. The second is the mind. And when you are going through a lot of change, some things that happen with your mind, a loss of memory. I'm 51. I don't know if it's because of age, but I do know that you are a little foggier when there's so much change coming at you. Less clarity of thought, poor decision-making. In life changes, there's a little rule that says, hey, don't make any large life decisions when you're going through another big change because you're not as clear as you could be. So that's the mind. The third is emotion. It is anger or frustration. It is when you're speaking to someone and you can feel that kind of emotional pull right under as you're talking with them. And there was a lot of emotion, anxiety, and depression that we have seen because of COVID and the uncertainty of what was happening with that. So that's emotion. And the last is spirit, and it's not Holy Spirit, although I grew up Catholic. This spirit is about purpose. And when there's a lot of change, we start asking, what is this all worth? What does this mean? And sometimes feeling adrift and wondering what we were connected to in the first place, questioning your values, and for some, a loss of direction. So Anne, we're going to do our first breakout room. We'll do groups of 3 people. And the question on the table is, what's been happening to you during this time of this pandemic? And the second part is, what can you do to take care of yourself? We're building some self-awareness. You'll be sharing with within your room what's been happening for you. And please know you can share on pandemic. That's how this learning was organized. But as Anne alluded to, with the killing of George Floyd and with the social uprising of our country and the world, that may be also on your mind. So that is a change for some of you. So that could also be part of your conversation. But what's going on with you and how are you impacted? And we'll do, how about 3 minutes, Anne? Welcome back, everyone. I'm telling you, they zoom you back into the large group, whether you are ready or not, in mid-sentence or not. It's always jarring for me. So welcome back. So here's the deal, my friends. The purpose of this slide is for you to have some self-awareness around, oh, I'm drinking more tequila than normal. Something's amiss. And so what is it that you do to take care of yourself? And what I know is that this has been a really trying time on the world for you, because here's what I say to our employees. Not only did COVID hit and now all this social uprising, it was any change that you were going through before this even hit on top of it all. So this self-awareness is for you to say, oh yeah, I'm not sleeping as well. Oh yeah, I'm having these headaches. What am I going to do to take care of myself? That's the goal. It is like the airplane, which is you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you help your friends. So, okay, let's move on. Next slide, please. So I want to share the difference between these two terms. Sometimes we use them interchangeably, but here's the thing. A change happens external to you and it's very quick. It was the day when the schools are closed. It was the day when our governor said, stay home. It happened outside of you and very quick. Life changes could be the birth of a baby, the day that baby is born. I don't think I ever held my baby like this, but pretend I did. The day you brought that baby home from the hospital. It could be the day you moved. Quick, external to you. And I'm so sorry that I have married and divorce on there. That's not very fair or nice, because you know they should be separated, but it could be the day you get married, the day you get a divorce. You got it. Transition is what happens to us on the inside, my friends. Transition is the psychological impact we all go through because of that change. It's personal how long it takes some people to go through some changes. And I bet you in your life, let's say in an organizational change, let's say you worked in a company and there was a big change of a leader everybody loved. And that is a shared change, but the transition of how you feel about that person leaving is personal. Maybe 2 months in, you're like, I don't know why I'm still crying every morning and my friends are fine. So we're going to spend time on the transition for you to understand what those are. And the whole goal of this, my friends, is for you to use it in your life, for you to use the verbiage that I'm sharing with you, to have self-awareness, to help yourself move through transition with grace. Okay, next slide, please, Ann. So there are 3 phases to transition: ending zone, neutral zone, and new beginning. This work comes from a pioneer in organizational development, and his name was William Bridges, and he was brilliant. And he wrote this book called Life Transitions, and he wrote it about his marriage. He was married over 40 years, and his wife suffered from cancer. And so she passed away, and he had this loving perspective of what happened to him while he watched his wife go through this to her end of life. And he was an organization development expert. And so he dealt with change in organizations. And he realized there are these 3 phases that we all need to understand to help go through it. So this learning we use when we're going through an organizational change so that all employees and leaders are on the same wavelength, but it's also a perfect mental model for you to have for your own life. So we'll be exploring this in the next few minutes. We'll go to the next slide, please, Ann. Oh, we go back up, sorry, to the last slide before I talk about that. Let's talk about ending zone. Ending zone, when something happens, you are automatically put into the ending. It is marked by grief and sadness. It is marked with a grieving. And when someone is grieving, behaviors could be crying or stress or frustration or sadness. So the ending always happens even with a happy change. So my friends out there, raise your hand if you have children. Okay, I'd like you to think about what ended for you when you became a parent. May I offer our sanity, freedom, money, time with your spouse, sleep, Anybody? Yeah, can I hear an hallelujah? Yeah. So even with the happy thing that a baby brings of change, it still marks an ending of what we lost. So every change starts with ending. That's what we'll go to the next slide with. There is something called, thank you, Anne, in the tubes. And that is when you let yourself and others be sad. It is not having to be positive or paint a grateful picture. It's not about look on the bright side. Let me share with COVID. The New York Times shared an article about how everybody, when during COVID, you'd say, how are you? And they'd be like, I'm fine. Or you'd say, I mean, I'm okay. I'm not in New York where it's really sad. So I'm like, knock on wood, I'm okay. But ladies and gentlemen, that answer, that Minnesota nice, and not sharing that you were really in a hard space, lets you not go through transition as gracefully as you would, because you have to feel the crap. So in our employee population, when we talked and we shared this learning, we said, stop asking people, how are you? And ask them, how are you feeling? And that is something I offer to you. Ask the people in your life, how are you feeling? And then challenge them to 2 feeling words. I'm feeling scared about what's going to happen. Is there going to be another wave? Yeah, I'm worried about that. Or some days I'm feeling hopeful that we're going to figure this out. So instead of how are you feeling? And do not diminish your in the tubes or your suckiness, because you know this, if you ignore the grief, it'll pop up in another time of your life. So feel the crap is what we say here at Self Esteem Brands. So next slide, please. I found this model on Instagram. I'm not on it very often, but when COVID hit, I found this model that is absolutely a perfect layer to the change and transition model. And they called this ending, like the first thing when the pandemic happened, you may have noticed yourself or remember yourself in any of these spaces around this circle. Sleeplessness. I'm not a drinker, but I absolutely did start drinking tequila. It will come up in conversation, 1 little glass a night. On the weeknights, I never was a drinker, but it's somehow, and I'm not, supporting it, but it was just something that I did when COVID hit. One for our employees that we talk a lot about here is the grief for the loss of the daily business routines and team relationships. I know in our last breakout that happened to many of you too. And so we just wanted to have space for people to say, I miss you. We actually have had all company webinars like this with 200 or more people. And we just have breakouts, and the question on the table is, how are you feeling? So give yourself and others space to share that. We'll go to the next slide, please. So the question on the table is, what has ended for you? Now, I know some of you are leaders of people. I don't want you to think about that. I want you to think about yourself and what ended for you. And maybe you're not in the ending zone, but maybe some of you could still be in the ending zone. Because here's the crazy thing, my friends. For every change you're going through, the transition is going to be different timing. So for some, transition of COVID, you might be through that and maybe you're a new beginning or you're the middle, but maybe something else just happened that pushed you into the ending zone. So I want you to talk about what ended for you when COVID hit. Okay, that's the question on the table. And then what is one thing that had stayed the same for you? Because that's the critical question when you're in the ending. All this has changed, but what has stayed the same? So Anne, we'll do 3 people again, and we'll do 4 minutes, please. It's very exciting to see who you'll be. Welcome back, everybody. Isn't it always a little scary when you don't know if you're going to come back into the large room? I was teaching this class to our Mexican franchisees. And so I would say some things. The slides were all in Spanish. I didn't know if they were correct or not. And then the translator would translate, and then my internet went down. Black screen, it was bad. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move to the next slide. I bring this back to you, ending zone. People are like, hey, Carol, I'm busy and I don't really like to feel uncomfortable, or I don't like grieving. How can I get through the ending faster? Because we got a lot to do here. And the answer to that, my friends, is the ending zone lasts as that equates how much you've lost. The more things you have lost in this ending, the longer the grieving. That's one to just kind of take on for a second. It depends on how much you've lost with how much you'll go through the ending zone. So ending zone can be uncomfortable, but you can't skip it, my Minnesota friends. You cannot skip it. Okay, neutral zone. It's when you're not as, it's not as hard, it's not grieving, but you're in this neutral zone like, we'll see what this is like. Hi, Tammy, neighbor that I love so much. Neutral zone is
sorry,
like
I was late.
putting your feet in the lake water, my Minnesota friends, to be like, is it warm enough, Wisconsin friends? Can I check this out? Neutral zone is marked by creativity. It is how, when COVID hit, sometime ahead, you're out of ending zone and you're creating ways for your habits. You're creating ways of taking care of your homeschooling children. One of our employees, he happens to be in our tech area, technology, he created this color light system. He and his wife were both working full time with 3 school-age children, and they had a button at their different offices within the house that they would push, and the red color meant alarm, alarm, take the kids. And like blue was like, it's all good, I got them. I'm telling you, it was a perfect neutral zone example, because the neutral zone is when we figure out, oh, Zoom can do breakouts. Oh, that's good for learning. Neutral zone is marked by creativity. It's not as hard as ending. It's not as great as a new beginning. Let's go to the next slide, please, Ann. I love, oh, this is a model of the COVID pandemic, the neutral zone. And look around into these ideas in this circle, and maybe you find yourself there now, or you remember, you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna stop looking at social media because people were like, I'm gonna learn Chinese during COVID. And you're like, I can't even take a shower. So that's when I stopped listening to social media. I love the second one too. I stopped compulsively consuming what hurts, from food to news. This was harming us. And you're thinking about, oh yeah. Tammy, I shared with him about my tequila habit that I started during COVID. I stopped drinking it on the weeknights, but I for sure have it on Friday and Saturday. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I love this quote. Neutral zone, it's not so much that we're afraid of change or so in love with the old ways, but it's that place in between that we fear. It's like being between trapezes. It's Linus when his blanket is in the dryer. There is nothing to hold on to. And any of you that have kids that have tried to wash their favorite animal or blanket, they stand outside the dryer staring at it, wondering when it's going to be back. This idea of the neutral zone in organizations is when we see people taking days off, trying to figure out what is important to them, or maybe not engaging in team communication, getting a little quiet. So trying to figure this thing out. If you lead others, those are some signs to watch for with people that are in the neutral zone. All right, next slide, please. All right, I offer you this idea, locus of control, internal or external. You may have seen this before in your life, but I think this is something worth talking about at this time. So an internal locus of control is when you believe that everything happens because you make it happen. I want that thing, I'm gonna work for it. I got, this is this goal, okay, it's up to me to get it. External locus of control is when you feel like it's out of your hands. It doesn't matter what I say. The example I can use is in our work in our franchisees, which are small business owners for the most part around the world. We saw some of our franchisees, for example, in the bar method, were like, all right, we're going to have a coalition. We're going to get together. COVID, we're not going to wait for the governor. We're going to figure out what we need to do. We're going to start online programming. Remember that, Tammy, how good that was? And they were like internal locus of control. And then on the flip side, we had franchisees that were calling us and crying. This is their life. This business was everything they put into it, and feeling so helpless that they didn't know what to do and they needed to wait with what was happening with the state. So there is no judgment about these two. It is just something to be aware of. And I even want you to think your own self-awareness. I feel like I came into the world and was reared with parents that were a little external locus. Like it's not what you do. It's just, oh, dang it, you're not lucky. And then I grew my own internal locus of control. This is an interesting perspective, not to be in judgment, but this impacts how you go through change and transition. If you feel like it's happening to you, or if you believe you have some say in how you'll move through it. We won't do a breakout because of time, but just something to have you think about. Let's go to the next slide, please. I always like a transition slide. That's what this is. Get it? Transition slide on transition. New beginning. So I moved to Minnesota when I met this man from Minnesota when I was living in downtown Chicago. And he's like, I said to him, where are you from? He said, Minnesota. I said, where's that? I thought, I knew it was a state somewhere west of Chicago, but I had no idea. So when I moved here, I moved to Inver Grove Heights, and there was an Applebee's and an Outback Steakhouse. And I lived downtown Chicago. I remember calling my friend going, I don't know how I got here. This is what she said: take a deep breath and find the nearest Starbucks. To which I was like, I don't think there's one here. So ending zone was hard. I moved here, got married. It was wonderful. Neutral zone, people were like, hey, Carol, want to join our book club? I'm like, yeah, no, we're moving. And then my husband said, you know, I work at 3M and I'll probably stay working there forever. And I'm like, all right. New beginning for me happened 6 years from living in Minnesota when I was at the state fair drinking a dairy shake from the dairy barn. And I was like, you mean this came from that heifer over there? New beginning sneaks up on you, and it's like trumpets. You don't know when, but the new beginning is when you're like, I got this. The new beginning is when you move into that new home and it doesn't feel like an awkward place or a hotel anymore. It feels like home. The new beginning when you have children is when you're like, I got this. I don't need a diaper bag. Come on, let's go. New beginning. All right, let's go to the next slide. Here are some ideas for COVID-19 of what are examples of the new beginning. I want you to read through these, and in the chat box, I'd love for you to share any of these that you connect with that are true for you. And type it in the chat box. Which ones for you are true? Getting outside and gratitude, those are great. Thank the Lord for the weather, is what I have to say. I leverage my strengths and make them available to others. That is a great one. And it can help you move even quicker into this new beginning. Social distance coffee with my core team. Ladies and gentlemen, engage in something that I love. Being outside every day is amazing. Here's what I saw in our franchisees and our employees and our friends around the world. COVID reminded them that life is going to go on whether you plan for it or not. I would talk with franchisees that would say, let me figure out this COVID and then I'll adopt that dog. Or let me figure out my business and then I'll do dating apps, whatever. And I'm hoping that we'll come out of COVID with a sense of life that we can't wait for things that we want to have happen. After 9/11, we saw a surge of people leaving corporate America and going into jobs of service, of teaching and social work. And I'm certain that that will happen again with COVID. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right. I hate that it's so fast, but we do have time. And here's what, some ideas to help you move forward, my friends. I want to just call out number 2. Perhaps lower your own expectations of yourself. Now, ego, we have a class at Self Esteem Brands you have to take within the first 6 months. It's called It's Your Ego, Not Mine. I love that title. It's where we teach people about ego. And ego is like, I am great or I suck. People think it's all positive, like it's all a sense of heightened awareness of yourself, but it's also when you feel less than others. It's an ego, it's a voice that says you suck or you're great. But in this idea about lowering your expectations, it is ignoring that ego voice that says you should be, why aren't you doing, and has any criticality or a critical eye to you. So in your breakout rooms, I'd love you to share with your persons, will be groups of 3. What will you do because of this learning? What idea perhaps was nudged maybe from the chat box or something that you thought about, maybe from a slide or something I've shared? But what is one thing you will try on to help you move through this time with grace? And let's do the breakout groups. Thank you, Anne. Welcome back. Tammy knows this about me. I'm a teaching hog, and a minute, like if you said, Carol, you had 8 hours, I'd be like, can I have 16 hours of teaching? So this was a blink, but it's been a pleasure to be with you. I'd like to close on this idea that checking in on people and how they're feeling should not be an option. You cannot just go into the work. You need space for how are you feeling. So your intro could be this. Hey, new team. I was on this learning with this crazy lady named Carol. I don't know, she's a little crazy, but she shared with us this idea about checking in with each other from a human level before we jump into business. And so I think we should try it. I promise you there's not going to be one person that won't love it. So you say, I want us to share 2 feeling words about how you are and why did you share those words? And I promise you everybody will be like, oh, thank you so much. Even the finance people. Thanks, everybody. And back to you, Anne, because I know you have some closing remarks to make.
Right, that's fabulous, Carol. So let's go ahead and do her exercise right now. Right in the chat box, if you feel comfortable, how are you feeling today? Like to know that. And then I would also like to provide one more shout out to our sponsors. I know we had Nick Girardi from Employee App who joined us. So Nick, if you want to do a wave to everybody, his information is in the chat and we will hopefully see more of them in the future. And then I wanted to also give Tammy Neighbor 1 second to talk about the July 1st networking event. If you enjoyed this kind of format today, breakouts and having conversation, that's what we'll be doing on July 1st.
Yeah, so July 1st, the event is up in our Eventbrite page. I don't think it's on our IABC MN website yet, but if you go to the IABC Minnesota Eventbrite page, you'll find it out there. And it is going to be kind of fun and formal like this. We'll kind of have little chunks of conversation, then we'll break out into small groups. The topic is less about feelings though, and we're focused on kind of our favorite tech tips and tools. So everybody's gonna get an opportunity to share what they use in their day-to-day work that they love and that they can't live without, and then get ideas from other people as well. So register for that. It's free for members. I think it's $10 for non-members.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for participating today. It made it even a better session. And thank you, Carol, for helping us out. And we look forward to seeing you again, either on July 1st or July 16th. Check it out on Eventbrite. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Tammy, you're staying on? And
I
Anne,
am for a second.
Okay.
I'm reading the chats.
Okay. Hi, Lee. Bye, Lee.
Nice to be with you all.
This was great. Carol, thank you so much. You know,
Sure.
and you know, I told you I was a bit of a little resistant to this whole feelings thing you've got going on.
That's not it's not a new thing. I encounter that.
Yeah, I figured as much, but you know, I've been loving it, and I'm definitely seeing the value in it, in kind of how I show up, but also in how I think about things.
Good.
Just personally. So thank you for what you've been doing, and thank you for spending time working with our group pro bono and sharing your knowledge and skills.
It for sure is like when it first hit and all the hard stuff with the employees, I was like, what am I doing? And how am I even adding value? And I had to like shake myself out of it and be like, oh yeah, this mental health and resiliency is important.
It is. And you know, everyone has imposter syndrome. We should do a session on imposter syndrome.
It's ego. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yep. I think a lot of communicators struggle with that.
And you know, I meant to say my undergrad major was communication and mass communication.